أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الخبيثات للخبيثين والخبيثون للخبيثات والطيبات للطيبين والطيبون للطيبات أولئك مبرؤون مما يقولون لهم مغفرة ورزق كريم صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات بجماعة. Before I begin, this request for Surah Fatiha for following Marhumin: Sayyid Aftab Hussain Abidi, Samana Khatun, Sayyid Nazar Hussain Bukhari, Naseem Firdaus Bukhari, Inayat Ali Shah, Salamat Ali Shah, Muhammad Tayyib, Muhammad Yusuf, Sayyid Muhammad, and all Marhumin and Marhumat. Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman. Continuing with the tafsir of Surat al Noor, we reached verse number 26, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing by saying the vicious women are for vicious men, and vicious men are for vicious women. Good women are for good men, and good men are for good women. These are absolved of what they say about them. For them is forgiveness and a noble provision. To an extent, we talked about it last night, but because we got into other stuff, other topics that came about in it, we steered away and we did not finish this particular verse. We see that some of the messages that we can derive, or the points that we can derive from this particular verse, is that the word tayyib means delightful and desirable. It has appeared in Quran as an attribute over here for the spouse, but in other places in Quran it has come as an adjective for wealth, offspring, children, city, speech, food, sustenance, residence, and trees. On the contrary, the word khabith, which is also used in this particular ayah for the selection of the spouse, has appeared in Quran as an adjective for other things as well, such as wealth, insan, spouse, speech, action, and lineage. Shadaratun khabitha, and all of those things that I'm sure you have in your mind. It is possible that this verse is giving us a standard when choosing a spouse. What to look for. These should be the criterion. This is the criteria when you are looking for a spouse, not other things that were mentioned yesterday. And so similar thinking, common beliefs, morals, compatibility, etc. Everyone naturally is inclined toward the people of their own liking. So keep it that, and you will be successful when it comes to that criteria. In Quran, there are attributes for sustenance. In this particular ayah, these were the attributes for a spouse. We see in Quran, this same attribute has been used for sustenance and risk. It says, such as rizqan hasana, goodly provision, rizqun kareem, as it appears over here, noble provision, kulu mimma razaqakumullahu halalan tayyiban, lawful and good food. It says وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسَبْ, that Allah provides His sustenance, the sustenance from where we don't even think and don't even imagine. It says يُرْزَقُونَ فِيهَا بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ, that is in the paradise, they will be provided therein without any reckoning, without any limit. So there will not be any limit to that. Messages that we learn from this ayah is that the nature of vicious people is that they go after the vicious. And therefore, the good people should always be hunting for the good people. Utilizing the favors and lawful things is the right of Ahl Iman. Keeping one's progeny sound depends on what kind of a spouse you have chosen. If it's tayyib, the progeny will also come out to be tayyib. If it's among the khabithin or khabithun, as mentioned in this ayah, it will also come out to be the same way. Supporting the pure and the chaste is mandatory. That's why Quran says, "Ulaika mubarra'una mimma yaqulun." They are bari'uz dhimma. They do not have any blame upon them from what those people were accusing them of. Immaterial things should be preferred over materialistic. Wherever Quran mentions rizqun kareem, which is a materialistic thing, it is preceded by lahum maghfirah. So whenever you hunt, go out for rizqun kareem, noble provision, it is always accompanied with maghfirat and the forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are discussion on risk that it is being discussed over here, I thought, we'll discuss, and we do that every now and then, to talk about the concept of israf and tabzir when it comes to risk, when it comes to food. Ayat of Quran in chapter number 17, verse number 27 of Surah Bani Israel says, إِنَّ الْمُبَذِّرِينَ كَانُوا إِخْوَانَ الشَّيَاطِينَ وَكَانَ الشَّيْطَانُ لِرَبِّهِ كَفُورًا. He said, indeed, the wasteful are brothers of shaitan, and shaitan is ungrateful to his Lord. So the concept of israf and tabdhir, wasting and being extravagant in using something, is being discussed. Not in just this ayah, and I will recite many other ayats, as I usually do. We see the discussion of israf. Our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, said, wealth is a gift and trust from Allah in the hands of insan, and therefore one must not be wasteful when spending it, or must be mindful how he or she spends it. So israf means to waste, to squander, or to go far or beyond the limits. Although utilizing food and zinat is again a natural thing, but in certain conditions, such as where there are needy and deprived, one must take care of them. And therefore, this is where the concept of sharing comes into play. This is why we see that in our history, that in the time of our sixth Imam, when the standard of living was better than that was the standard in the time of Amirul Mu'mineen. People were more wealthy. People had better, provisions, better sustenance, better food, better. The level of living was better at that time, in the time of our sixth Imam. So he dressed according to the time. But in the time of Amirul Mu'mineen, it was different. In fact, some people in the time of our sixth Imam pointed fingers towards him. They criticized him of wearing and dressing, nicely. He dressed up whenever he went out, whenever he was meeting, whatever the case was, he was presentable. Not that, our previous Imams were not presentable, but the cost of living or the standard of living was separate in that time. So Imams always lived their lives according to the standard of the time. And therefore, it is a message that is being given to us as well. Israf, although it's another thing. You can live anytime and you can still be musrif. You can still be extravagant and regardless or not take care of the status of the society. So israf in food is sometimes, but consuming too much as well. On the other hand, it leads to development of many physical and spiritual illnesses. Many doctors sitting over here, they will concur this point, how too much eating is also one of the causes of the illnesses that we have. Such as stern-heartedness, that is from the spiritual aspect, not from the physical aspect. Stern-heartedness, qaswat qalbi, comes into play, or being deprived of the enjoyment of ibadat. Al-mi'datu baytu kull da'in. This mi'dah, this stomach is the house of all of the illnesses, and therefore you got to take care of it. Too much of it is going to also go ahead and lead towards illnesses. We can just move forward a little bit, the people coming in with a loud salawat. But the spiritual lacking that comes with it, with belly being filled. Now I know when we're fasting, it's difficult, especially when it comes to the Maghrib prayers. You want to finish your prayer, but the lazzat that you get when you're performing that Maghrib and Isha prayer and it's time for iftar has kicked in. As opposed to when your bellies are filled, when you have broken this fast and you've eaten more than that was required, and now you want to go ahead and perform the namaz. I don't know, if you experience it yourself, different people will be different. But you will not get the same lazzat when performing that ibadat after you have filled your belly. You might be strong to perform that prayer at that time, but definitely you will be lacking that spiritual uplifting when you perform. That's why when our Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he went for Miraj, when he ascended to Miraj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there was a conversation between him and Allah. And this whole conversation is documented because Prophet came back and he told the story. And so the whole hadith of Mi'raj is documented. In Irshad al-Daylami, you'll find the whole hadith is there. And one of the sentences of that hadith says, because it was a discussion between Allah and Prophet, Allah was addressing Prophet with Ya Ahmad. His name on Arsh is Ahmad. His name on the Farsh, on the land is Muhammad. So he kept on asking him, Ya Ahmad, hal tadri? Ya Ahmad, hal ta'rif? Ya Ahmad, hal tadri? Oh Ahmad, do you know? Oh Ahmad, do you know? And obviously Prophet was declining that, yes, in front of you I have no knowledge. So whatever it is that I have is from you. So no, I don't know what you're asking. So Allah asked him a question, that do you know when my abd is closest to me? In which situation? Prophet said, La adri, I don't know. Allah replied by saying, إِذَا كَانَ جَائِعًا أَوْ سَاجِدًا. When he's empty stomach, ja'i, when he's hungry, and he's in the state of sajda. Both of these things are combined every day during the month of Ramadan. You're ja'i, you're hungry, and you're in the state of sajda. That is the closest. Now obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is min hablil warid, He's closer than your jugular veins. We're talking about a spiritually closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That closeness that we recite in our niyat when we say the niyat qurbatan ilallah. We're not seeking physical closeness to Allah, that is not possible. We're seeking the spiritual closeness. So what it says, when my abd is ja'i, he's hungry and he's in the state of sajda, that is as close as my abd gets to me. So take this opportunity. You are doing this sajda in the state that you are hungry during this month of Ramadan. So we see some people really into it when they're performing their du'as, when they're reading their namaz, when they're reciting different du'as, or someone is reciting du'a and they're just listening to it. They're weeping and they're crying, and there's this halat upon them, there's this condition upon them that you and I lack. I look at this person and I say, look, how much riqqat this person has. Similar riqqat that we derive when we are listening to the masaib. Some people just don't cry when they listen to the masaib. Now there's nothing against those people, but you would say, I just don't get in the state of crying no matter what happens, no matter how many masaib are recited in front of you. Similar situation when these beautiful du'as with translation that you can understand what is being asked are recited, yet there's no effect on us. We're just reading this du'a. So dua is not for reading, dua is for making. You see these words of dua Joshan al-Kabir, you see these words of dua iftitah, it should bring tears to your eyes. But when it doesn't, we should be saying to ourselves, there must be something that we are spiritually lacking, that it is not affecting us. One of the reasons is the stomach being filled. Obviously it's not filled during the month of Ramadan, but still it is lacking, so there must be other reasons behind it. But one of the things that insan loses is the lazzat of ibadat, when the person is filled and his belly is completely filled. Our sixth Imam, at another place, Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam said, he said, إِنَّمَا الْإِسْرَافُ إِسْرَافُ فِيمَا أَتْلَفَ الْمَالُ وَأَضَرَّ بِالْبَدَنِ. He said, israf is that in which wealth is squandered and body is harmed. So these are the two things that are happening. The wealth is, lost, and the body is also being harmed in that regards. Now, there are a lot of examples right in front of us, but there's no time to go into the example. Another place, he clarifies that israf isn't always spending too much. You can spend too much, but it would not be considered israf. When it comes to the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, keeping in mind that there are rights of others in front of you as well. But when it comes to the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you do israf over there, extravagance over there, it is not considered israf. So there is opportunity, places where we are allowed to go ahead and do israf. For example, you got this masjid in front of you. No matter how much you spend for the cause of this masjid, because it's the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will not be considered israf. As long as you're taking care of your family, as long as you're taking care of the other wajibat that are upon you. One of the results of this israf is tughyan, is transgression. We read in Surah Taha, verse number 81, it says, "Kulu min tayyibati ma razaqnakum wa la tatghaw fihi fayahill alaykum ghadabi." It says, eat from the good things which we have provided for you, and do not transgress or oppress others therein, lest my anger should descend upon you. So the whole month of Ramadan, we've been asking everyone to make sure that we do not waste. The month of Ramadan comes, and although we eat less, hopefully, but we end up wasting more than it is required. So instead of this month being the month in which we are fulfilling all the requirements from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in other areas, we just neglect. So what happens? We're wasting food. Any type of, every day, alhamdulillah, people coming here, and all of these centers, not just this place, all of these places throughout the world who are arranging for iftar. And just imagine how much food is wasted. What happens is that, we are hungry throughout the day. It's 19, 18 hours of fasting. And when we see the food, so what happens, we don't know how much we're going to eat, because we've lost that balance, we've lost that measure. So we take more than what is required. And then, the thought is, who's going to go ahead and get up and go again next time? So let's just fill in the first time. What happens is that we don't eat half of that. And half of that ends up being in the garbage bins. And that is where it's a responsibility. You will be responsible. You remember when we were growing up, I was brought up with this misal. If you drop salt on the ground, on the day of judgment, you'll be picking it up with your eyebrows. I was like, how's that possible? That's how the example was given to me. Or I'm sure some of you shared the same, similar. So it was only in regards to salt. So we were very careful not to spill salt. We spilled everything else, but we were very careful not to spill salt. But this misal is not just for salt. Everything, every food, everything that goes under that category, if you spill it, you waste it, you will be picking it up with your eyebrows. In other words, it will be very difficult for you to go ahead and pay compensation for what you have wasted in this life. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He says, "Kulu mimma razaqakumullahu wa la tattabi'u khutawat ash-shaytan." We read this ayat many times, not just this ayat, but the khutawat ash-shaytan has come before as well. Eat from what God has given to you from sustenance, and do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. Again, what is the relationship of eating halal and not following the footsteps? I think it's very clear. One relationship is that between eating and following shaitan, and doing israf, is that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us not to waste. Do not waste. La tubadhir, la tusrifu. And he says, he's commanding us. So wherever in Quran you see sigha amr, whenever there's a command, it becomes wajib. Aqim as-salat. That's how fuqaha prove that aqim as-salat, because it's sigha amr, it's ordering you, it becomes wajib. It proves the wujub of salat. So salat becomes wajib. Says the same thing over here. وَلَا تَقُلُوا وَلَا تَصْرِفُوا كُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا. Eat and drink and do not squander, do not waste. So it becomes a wajib. Allah commands us not to waste. Shaitan orders us the opposite. We do the opposite, we follow shaitan, so we're, in other words, following the footsteps of shaitan. So here you see the connection between when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Kulu mimma razaqakumullah wa la tattabi'u khutawat ash-shaytan." And I always repeat this whenever we come to this ayah, that Allah did not say don't follow shaitan. He said do not even follow the footsteps of shaitan. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Unfortunately, there's too much wastage in every part of our life. When it comes to water, we see that people are pouring water. They'll take the whole cup, or especially the kids, they'll take the whole cup, they'll drink one sip or two, and then the whole rest of the water goes away. Alhamdulillah, we're living in a place, we're living in a time where there's plenty of these resources available. But you got to understand and imagine places where they're, looking for this water. And forget about, just any type of water, not filtered or anything, just any type of water they can get their hands onto it. That's what they're looking for. That's why in our fiqh, whenever we drink water, it is mustahab to say send salam on our third imam. Our third imam, in fact, he himself said that. In sharabtumuni, when you drink the water, mine azbin, the water which is gowara, which is good, that is worthy of being drank, remember me, remember my thirst. So we are taught with that, whenever we're drinking water, we remember Imam Hussain. So when we remember Imam Hussain, we throw the rest of the water away, how does that go together? It doesn't go together. So that's why these things are taught. It's not wajib to remember him, but it is mustahab. So it's part of our fiqh. So why is it there? So that it keeps you on your toes, that even when you're drinking, remember the thirst of the people in Karbala. Remember how they were thirsty for 3 days. Remember how there was no water even for the 6-month-old up to those who are 90 years old. For the women and the ladies and the kids and the young and all together, they didn't have any water. So keep their thirst in mind whenever you are drinking, and don't waste this water away. Another way we see, and some people might, hopefully nobody over here, but some people might think that we're going overboard with this, pounding over and over with israf and, waste management and, make sure you stack up your place and make sure you stack up everything. We might be going overboard with these, and someone might feel offended with it, as it is not a very sweet discussion. But, our sixth Imam gave us a criteria over here. And when you hear this criteria, you will say, well, keep on reminding us. Keep on reminding us, because we're not offended. What did he say? He says, أَحَبُّ إِخْوَانِي مَنْ أَهْدَى إِلَيَّ عُيُوبِي. He said, my best friend is the one who points out my shortcomings. Sixth Imam said, who's my best friend? Not the one who's always praising me. The one who's pointing out my shortcomings, my defects. He's my best friend. One who shows me the defects, one who laughs at you no matter what you do is not your friend. The one who's telling you, no, this is not right, this is not right, pointing out while he himself is taking care of those things, is your best friend according to this. So therefore, when we talk about these things, where there might be direct address to all of you over here, hopefully there's no one taking offense to it. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So if I stood here and said something like this, and did something wrong, and said something wrong, and you show appreciation, and there's no tradition of clapping inside the masjid, but you say wah wah, and I'm not sure if you're my friend or not, because unless you come up to me and say, Maulana, this is what's happening. Maybe you can do this. Maybe you can make it better. That person who comes and corrects me, and believe it or not, I will not feel offended. I will actually, according to the hadith, go by saying that person is my best friend, because he's correcting me. He's making me better than what I was before. And therefore here we need to understand this fact as well. Second thing that we miss or we waste is the food, especially in this month of Ramadan. Although we eat less, we tend to, but we're wasting too much. Whenever there are larger gatherings, and same thing goes for our weddings and other receptions that we have, there's somehow we need to show, or I don't know if it's about showing people, or is it about just being felt in a way that what would people say कि भाई इन्होंने तो खाने का इंतज़ाम ही सही नहीं किया. There's not enough food that they provided. Why are they keeping? They're so stingy for in other words. They don't have enough dishes. Unless you have 10 dishes and 10 different types of desserts, people are gonna be praising you. But if you have anything less than that, then right away people will be saying, oh, this person, look how much wealth he has, and this is how he goes out and spends in the wedding of his children, for example. That's how the mentality has become. And so we also follow that trend, saying that, well, what people are going to say about us. Instead, not realizing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to say about that, what Masumeen are going to say about that. It's not how much or how much I can, when it comes to being thrifty in these things, when it comes to saving, it goes along. We need to play a role in this, green planet, or reducing the negative effects that this planet is having due to the waste that we are causing. So we all need to play our little role in it, and unless all of us chip in and play our little role in it, it will not come about with a difference. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'm running out of my time, so I'm skipping through a lot of things. Poverty and distress are causes of israf and tabdhir. It says, "Inna sarafa yurithul faqra wa inna al-qasda yurithul ghina." That it causes what? This sarf, this israf leads towards poverty. And obviously it does understand. You spend more towards things which are not important, it will end up causing you to be poor. Israf leads to poverty. Moderation makes you self-sufficient. So nobody will be scolding you when it comes to moderation. And so, don't go by the judgment of people when they say, what are they going to do with all that money? Keep this one ayat in your minds all the time. And inshallah, I will end with it. I'll conclude with it. This is from Surah Tawbah. Surah Tawbah, verse number 24. I want everyone to go home and read this ayah and say and to evaluate yourselves, and I will go ahead and read this ayat as well, and evaluate ourselves as to who do we really care for. We care for our family, obviously. We care for our, closest ones, obviously. We care for our, community members, obviously. But who do we really care? And who does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to really care for when it comes to taking the commands, when it comes to making important decisions of our life? It says, Muhammad, tell them, if your fathers, children, brothers, spouses, relatives, the property that you possess, the trade you fear may have no profit, and the homely life are more beloved to you than God, His messenger, and fighting for the cause of God, wait until God brings about His decision and torment upon you. Just keep this ayat with you. Surah Tawbah, verse number 24. Here's a decision. Who are you going to prefer making important decisions? Your fathers, your mothers, your children, your brothers, your spouses, your relatives, or you're going to go ahead and choose the decision that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken for you, the decision that Prophet has taken for you, the decision that Masumeen alayhim salatu wasalam have taken for you. So here the question and answers will be raised, and you go ahead and put yourself in that situation. I usually give a few examples over here, but again, not to offend anyone, just to few examples so we can derive which direction I want to lead. I know I'm running out of my time. If you ask a person, why do you have musical functions at your wedding? They'll say, women want it. In our house, women usually want this function to happen, so that's why we don't really have much say in it. So they blame it on the women. Go back to this ayah. Muhammad, tell them, if your fathers, your children, your brothers, your spouses, and relatives, they make you do something which Allah does not want you to do, then wait for His decree. You ask a woman, why don't you, for example, observe hijab? Reply by saying, my husband doesn't like it. He doesn't want me to do hijab, for example. Go back and read this ayah. Muhammad, tell them, if your fathers, your children, your spouses, your brothers, your relatives are more important to you than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then wait for the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a child, you ask a child, why do you dress like this? Or why do you have such a hairdo that you have now? The answer will be, because my peers have the same and they want me to look this way, and it is hip, it's cool and whatnot. You go back and you ask this question, oh Prophet, tell them, are your peers more important to you? Are your relatives more important to you? Is your spouse more important to you than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Then you can go ahead and do whatever you want to. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to be able to follow these commands that have been given to us in this holy book of Quran, and as well as the explanation has been provided by Masumeen alayhi salatu wasalam, so that we're able to better ourselves, especially in this month of forgiveness, in this month of rahmat, and the blessings of mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa akhir da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.